All right, welcome everybody. Really excited today for this edition of Fuse Bites. In that I'm normally by myself and I don't typically have a partner in crime, so I'm very much excited to have a bit of a dais, a bit of a team involved in this conversation. But why don't we go around and do a round of introductions? I think I'm already speaking to my teammate, and Carol, why don't we start with you before we get to our guest?
Sure. So some of you know I go by either Carol or Cee. I thought in the new century I needed a new name just to be a forward kind of person. Anyhow, I thought Carol was too last century. So I prefer Cee today. And I've been with Fuse since 2015. It's sort of, I have to pinch myself when I realize it's been 7 years.
Wow.
And before I joined Fuse, I most recently had my own business where I was with two partners running a brokerage firm. So I transitioned from the world of finance to the world of AI and tech. And I've been very fortunate to have great team members like Umar and Lizzie, who's behind the scenes in our podcast productions. And I've learned a ton. So I'll interject other stuff as we go through the podcast, but I think that's a good intro for now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I am Joel Brown-Christenson. I have partnered up with Cee, and we'll get into that exciting partnership. I co-founded ViableEdu back right when COVID hit in April of 2020. And ViableEdu is a fintech-focused financial literacy platform where we partner with firms and organizations to teach finance with a particular focus on fintech. So thank you so much for having me, and excited to have this conversation.
No, absolutely. I think this is going to be a fun one, and without further ado, I'll just dive right into this. And Carol, maybe I'll direct this to you in terms of that initial relationship between Viable and Fuse. How did that happen?
So during COVID, as you all remember, we were frozen. Like we weren't allowed to go out and do things that we normally did. And I was a meetup junkie. And pre-COVID, I used to go to meetups 2-3 times a week. Wow. So when COVID hit, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I was lucky enough to be introduced to some guys in the Midwest. Actually, one was in New York, one was in St. Louis, and the other one was in Chicago. And they realized that a lot of us meetup junkies needed an alternative. So they said, look, why don't we have a regular get together online where we bring beers, wine, whatever, juice, they don't care. And we just talk with people. And somehow I got invited to one of the first Funders and Founders event. And that kept me going all through COVID. And at one of them, Joel showed up. I don't know who invited him, but he just showed up. And we had what we used to do in those events was maybe there'd be a presentation in the beginning, but then we'd go into different breakout rooms and you'd get to know 5 or 6 people. And then you'd do that for 10-15 minutes and go to another breakout room. So you really got to talk in depth for a couple minutes to different people. And we were in the same breakout room, and that's how it happened.
Right. No, that makes sense. There was a world in which I used to go to, oh goodness, 3 to 5 in-person events in real life over here in Toronto, and it seems like just beyond a lifetime ago to actually meet people in real life, shake hands with a room full of 500 people all over each other. That having said that, I do hope to go back. We've dipped our toes back into that a little bit. That's wonderful. That dovetails perfectly into, well, Joel, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Viable, the reason you exist, what it is that you do.
Yeah, and I touched on the intro a little bit, but basically we're a response to virtual learning. We put our heads together when the pandemic first hit on ways that we could create educational and professional opportunities, specifically at that time for college students and recent college graduates that were sent home and had all of their kind of plans canceled for that summer. So my colleague Chris White and I came up with the idea of hosting virtual programming that touched specifically on fintech, and we'll kind of dive into our definition of fintech. It's a bit of a buzzword, but a differentiated approach to financial literacy with a little bit more contemporary practices. And thinking back to when the pandemic hit, there was such a rise in retail investing and an uptick in demand for understanding how the financial world works, both institutionally and personally. And I think we were able to meet that void on the short term. And then we realized about halfway through that this is a very good way, efficient way, low cost way, and far reaching way to provide high level, live, synchronous financial literacy across the globe. So since then, we decided to take a partnership-based route as opposed to a tuition-based route. So no students pay for the programming that we do. And we decided to partner with companies, nonprofits, educational institutions, and government entities to democratize financial literacy and create more of a level playing field. So in terms of underrepresented communities that we would like to propel the academic and professional opportunities for, both within finance and outside of it, this is a really good channel to do so. And also to connect companies with vetted, hireable, and educated talent. We have found a way to be that educational and training bridge directly into those companies. So it started out just as a couple Zoom calls where we're teaching how to demystify finance, and it's turned more into a really good incubator and a pipeline of educating people that are interested in finance, both professionally and that want to learn about it just in terms of their day-to-day lives.
That's really funny that you say that in terms of a really good Zoom call. I think Carol and I think all of us can speak to a lot of really wonderful things brewing over a cup of coffee in real life or a dinner or what have you. But now you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought of that a lot of businesses, relationships have started over a really good Zoom call over the last 2 or 3 years. That is hysterical to me. Joel, you'd spoken a little bit about financial literacy, and I think I know what that means, at least in terms of my world and my experiences. But I would love to learn a little bit more about what financial literacy today means to the Viable team.
Yeah, I mean, I guess our definition is slightly more institutional. So we're teaching how the financial world works and how it is intertwined by technology. We also focus on personal finance. We think it's incredibly important and very overdue for people within this country and outside of it to understand the intricacies of financial literacy, understand the buzzwords, so that they're equipped to make their own personal, financial decisions as they pursue any career that they end up pursuing. I come from a background of I was in the financial industry. I was at a buy-side asset manager in Boston. And I think that there is a misconception that people that work in finance understand how the financial world works. Well, a lot of the times it's not the case at all. So what we wanted to do was to create more accessibility through virtual learning. And when we're starting to do a hybrid approach with in-person, we'll get into that. And then to equip people with this information is really opening themselves up to further opportunities. And again, that's both educationally, that's professionally, and it's also understanding how the broader world works when it comes to the intersections between finance and really just every facet of capitalism. And then lastly, we wanted to, I mentioned this a little bit before, but we wanted to level the playing field. I grew up in a family that did talk about finance at the dinner table. A lot of people did not have that opportunity. So if we can accelerate the knowledge of those that weren't exposed to that information early on, when it comes to innovation, think about how many people we're looking over in terms of those that don't currently have that understanding, but could very quickly, rapidly, and successfully start to understand the intricacies of this world. So that's kind of how we define it, and that's what gives us such excitement, is because we think that the demand here and the opportunity here is pretty insatiable.
No, I love that because I've got a 4-year-old, and it's amazing what topics that, regardless of the complexity, if you're just kind of presented it properly, that my son can is far more well versed than some of his classmates in the Toronto Raptors basketball team, and certain types of certain specific makes and models of cars, because dad won't stop talking about both of those things. As hilarious as that is, and I promise you it's hilarious, but those kitchen table conversations can lead towards so much more, and that early understanding and allowing folks to really build off those types of conversations is fantastic. I've heard a couple of things. I think, as Carol and I have worked very closely with each other over the years, I know kind of the reasons for Fuse existing, and you've said a number of things that also kind of seem very familiar. And Carol, maybe I'll throw the question to you in terms of how you feel Viable and Fuse are complements to each other, and maybe that diving a little bit more into the kind of the premise of the partnership between Fuse and Viable, because I've already heard a number of things, and I'm like, those are some of our core beliefs.
Well, let me just add one little twist. Like Joel, I was fortunate enough from the time I was, I don't know, 11 years old, maybe even younger. I was very interested about companies. Now, obviously, I was interested in companies that made dolls and other stuff. But
yeah, sure.
So my brother and I started making reports to our father at dinner. So we got into talking about companies when we were kids, and that interest stayed with me my whole life. So
if there is any chance that any of those reports are still somehow survive, I would pay a significant amount of money to see one of them.
I had 7 companies that I was responsible for following, and I tracked their stock price every week. I mean, I was in like 5th, 6th grade, and I was doing this. Anyhow,
Okay.
So that's how I got my interest. But how do I see the complements between what Joel's been doing and what Fuse has been doing? So we have been taking young engineers and teaching them how to do advanced AI in finance. But these engineers, they don't know the difference between a warrant and an option. I mean, and Joel's trying to help people understand the tools of finance, how you decide to make a decision to buy or sell a stock, right? And what I believe is the engineers who are doing this very sophisticated modeling want to understand how all this fits together, and they don't. Okay, they know how to create very complex models, but they don't truly see how it relates to the buying and selling of securities. And that is our goal, is to basically help the people doing the very sophisticated modeling understand how trading occurs, just what traders think about all day, right? Sure. And vice versa, okay? And have some of the people who are doing buying and selling on a trading desk understand a little bit about the background of the modeling that's gone into some of the decisions.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. We've Joel, I might hit you with another question in terms of defining something, but we've thrown around the word fintech pretty heavily within our world. I know it's definitely a focus at Fusemachines in terms of the types of partners that we like collaborating with. But I do recognize that word again means different things to different people. How does fintech fall into your world, and what does that mean to you and your team?
Just as a follow-up to Cee's point, I think that this partnership kind of defines both portions of that world. We can be the fin side of fintech, and Fusemachines can be the tech side of fintech.
Right.
And the abundance of demand for obviously data-driven education, but particularly AI in my world of financial literacy and connecting people with professional opportunities and equipping them with not only the knowledge, but also the skills that they need to be a value add for those companies. AI is high in demand, and to combine what we're able to do and what we're able to teach, I think will serve as a invaluable resource for people that are both trying to innovate within the field and also understand the current and also historical implications of the work that they're doing. So, our definition of fintech, which again, buzzword, a lot of people have it's kind of like ESG.
Right.
But we are more when we say we're fintech focused, we are basically teaching the major parties and the major intermediaries of the broader financial world and how they're connected by technology and how that's changed over time, particularly within the last 10 years. I don't think that there's much of a difference between finance and tech anymore. I think fintech and finance are pretty much interchangeable. I think we're past that tipping point. So to have these forms of education to be separate, I think is doing ourselves a disservice as educational providers, but also doing our students a disservice. So to give them a full encapsulation of what today, 2022, 2023 finance looks like, should be financially focused with a major additional focus on the technological aspects of the day-to-day of finance.
Right. We've spoken a little bit about the folks that would benefit most from this sort of education and this sort of curriculum. I get the sense that that's not a small group, Joel. Like in terms of a target audience, who would you be focusing on? I imagine it's a pretty wide net.
That's the beauty of it, and that's what we didn't realize at the start. The applicability of what we're teaching does not have an age connected to it, does not have a professional or educational background connected to it. We're trying to rethink the antiquated approach of teaching and of identifying talent that can not only understand the current financial and technological world, but are also equipped with the confidence and the tools to innovate within. And in doing so, we're realizing that people from all over the world are not only interested in this, but really need it to pursue whatever education and profession that they're looking to do, just because of the consolidation of all these different types of industries that are all kind of coming together. So that's what we're really excited about. We're able to connect with people all over the world. People either have someone that they know that they're interested in this type of work, an organization that they're passionate about, that thinks that ViableEdu could be a great financial literacy arm for a company that would be interested in this, schools that are looking to differentiate their educational opportunities, and also governments are really looking to be on the cutting edge of financial technological innovation. So in terms of partnerships and in terms of the actual individuals that we're able to serve, we find it pretty widespread and very large.
Right. Carol, I'm curious about your thoughts in terms of in today's world. It's incredibly different than it was 3 years ago, than it was 5 years ago. Our new normal is really something that none of us could really have expected. And in today's world, what are your thoughts in terms of the importance of teaching fintech?
Well, I think that what we saw in the last couple of years is a lot of very young people getting into stock trading, specifically through gamification, right? And people who knew nothing, okay, but were sitting at computers, got a free invitation to get an account at Robinhood, and they just started trading, not knowing anything.
Right.
And a lot of them did okay for a while, and then some of them got into really bad stuff, right, because they understood nothing. Okay, but they understood games and video games, right? And they thought that investing was a little bit like video games, only it's real money that you can lose as well as make. So I think there's a real need for education, whether it's a teenager or a grandmother, it doesn't matter. You had everybody sort of, well, not everybody, but many people.
It opened up to a new world, folks that were probably not anywhere close to that space.
Right.
we're drawn in and in numbers that we hadn't seen before.
And
Yeah,
on
so
Cee's
I
point
think,
too, there, just as a follow-up to Cee's point, we've seen a level of urgency to try to teach people in this space because of that exact point. And what we were seeing in 2020, where things
Right.
were technically going well, but just based off of something that was necessarily not necessarily what they were intending to do in terms of financially investing in things. We decided that this was a really good time to try to get in front of those people, because eventually, yeah, it's going to turn and a lot of people are going to get hurt. So that I just wanted to add that on.
No,
yeah, no, it's very
that
important.
dovetails really well into what I wanted to ask next in terms of, it sounds as though there's some catch up that needs to happen between what we do in terms of higher education and traditional finance. There's a gap that's growing a little bit quicker than traditional education can keep up. I'll throw that to both of you. Is there a world in which we need to speed up the pace a little bit?
Absolutely. I'll just jump in really quickly. And I think there's a reason that gap is widening quickly. It's because the innovation within finance and fintech is evolving so rapidly that it's very hard for these schools to be on the outside looking in and really adequately teach what exactly is happening in this world. That's kind of why we take an approach where we have subject matter experts that are doing the innovation, doing the disruption, or on the front lines of these changes in fintech to be the ones that are actually teaching. I think that I think that college equips you with an understanding of a lot of the baseline knowledge in terms of, I'm more on the finance side, a lot of the baseline knowledge that you need to have the ability to understand, but it's not going to equip you with the information that you need to be valuable at a firm. And I don't think that's really by design, but to really start to accelerate these opportunities, I think there needs to be a complete rethink in the way that financial education and a lot of other education is provided to both college students and all different types of students from different age groups, right, to really match the speed and the velocity of this innovation within this world.
Well, let me add a couple things. First of all, we didn't mention Reddit today, but that's one of the names that should be out there, because a great deal of these learners, were using Reddit as a way to gain information, and not having a full picture. Okay, and one of the things that finance professionals have come to realize through this phase that we've been through during COVID was the power of individual investors that hadn't really been seriously considered for a long time. So I think, in MBA programs today, people are rethinking how they've been talking about the individual investor. I mean, people are really having to do a rethink, and that's healthy. That's great. But we want people to be well equipped. And what the courses that Joel and his team are developing are to help people be equipped to be able to evaluate information, to figure out how they want to participate in this investing world. What Fuse has been doing is giving the technical expertise to people. But if I'm an engineer, I don't just want the technical know-how. Okay, in the old days, we used to call it, black box investing. I want more than just knowing how to create algorithms. I really want to understand the full gamut. And I don't want to feel like I'm just being a technocrat, so to speak, working on these models. So I think from the engineering aspect, as well as from the people who are just playing around in the markets, they both want to understand more. And that's why we thought the combination of Fuse being able to provide some technical expertise while Viable helping on the practical end was a really good combination for today's learners. I don't even want to call them students. Because when
Right.
I think of students, I think of a certain age group. When I think of learners, I think of any age.
Any age, absolutely. Now that's interesting. I mean, then that's that combination of education and technology that you both kind of speak of. And I'll ask both of you again. I mean, I imagine that combination of education and tech is what allows us to keep up with the pace, among other things. Any other benefits? Is why you guys have both spoken a number of times in terms of that combination, but why the need now to combine education and tech? Joel, I'll start with you.
Well, I think it's already happening, and it's already happened. For us to provide virtual education is just by definition is the combination of education and tech. And I think it's, I think virtual learning gets a negative connotation, and for good reason. But if you can do it in a way that brings a lot of the personability of in-person to a virtual ecosystem, I think that it can really change the definition of how you can provide this information, who you can provide it to. I think we're a lot further along than we initially thought, particularly when we were forced into a kind of a virtual component with COVID. And then since COVID hit, I think that a lot of people are realizing that education has changed forever, and that there are a lot of ways that we have not really thought of that can provide accessibility of education to people that would not have had that prior. And I think that point really is, not only is it an altruistic way of thinking about education, but it's a huge opportunity to reach for people that may not have had that opportunity prior. So, we're a little bit more on the kind of the backseat, looking out at a lot of the ed tech innovation that's happening really excites us because we can partner with those firms. Fusemachines is a perfect example of that. And then we can bring our level of and our layer of expertise straight from the front lines of finance directly into the integration of whatever this education looks like.
Right. No, I think that it speaks to Viable very much so in terms of the elegance. I obviously being on the Fusemachines side of that partnership, of that integration happening, and we pride ourselves of kind of being on a certain set of front lines on the technology side, and then being able to connect and work that closely with Viable has been seamless. And again, I think it speaks to that forward-looking nature of your leadership. Absolutely, Carol. Were you about to add something
I was
to?
going to say, what Fuse wants to do, which is similar to Viable, is a combination of what we call synchronous and asynchronous.
Right,
like,
of course.
We call it online live, but we do think that in person, whether it's in real life or online live, it's a very key component of learning. And versus asynchronous, when people are doing stuff on their own and getting, good feedback on it, but it's a different experience. And what I'm hoping that online learning becomes is something better than it is today, where, students are at different levels, and that they can enhance from where they're starting and go further, and that it's somehow not the same experience for every student, right? Because people come to a course, whatever it is, at a different level. So that's for the future. But what I'm saying is both Viable and Fuse are pretty committed to this combination of synchronous and asynchronous. Whether the synchronous is going to be in real life or not, it's, and maybe it's a combination, but both have their place in education. And, and we both see education for people at every stage in their development, whether they be 15 or 50, it doesn't matter, because things are changing and people want to understand finance today, whether they're 15 or 50, it doesn't matter.
I hope in our lifetimes that education is one of the most evolved aspects of life. I think that there is so much opportunity here to completely change the landscape and the kind of the definition of how education is provided, who education is provided to. And I'm hoping Viable and Fuse together can kind of change that narrative and be part of that change.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic for exactly that. Education is an incredibly important part of just all facets of my life. Obviously, I'm part of the Fusemachines team, but also my wife is an educator. She teaches first grade, and I've had a number of stories with her over the last few years of moments that she has with her students, and I've absolutely said countless number of times that child is going to remember that forever, regardless of first grade, fifth grade, whatever it is. I know we all have those moments, and I'm, truthfully jealous of someone being able to have that connection with someone, and she's incredible at what she does and puts in the work, and you see how that comes out in terms of seeing these children grow right before your eyes. But what I would love, so one of my fun questions that I'm excited to ask both of you, and Carol, perhaps I'll start with you. Can you remember a teacher who taught you about finance, that individual that you still remember? And if you've got the name, that's extra credit points for you. But if you can remember, actually, not to put you on the spot, I'll ask both of you that same question, but is there a teacher that taught you about finance that you remember that you would be able to list out by name, and a memory there?
I'm happy to jump in.
Do you have that? Feel free to jump us in.
For a minute.
Got it. Who goes to my undergrad at Rhodes College specifically because we weren't taught finance in high school, and that's whole nother conversation about something that's changed in the United States that I'm really excited about, is that finance is starting to be integrated into a lot of states' social studies curriculum. But at Rhodes College, I had a professor by the name of Jade Planchin. I believe it was her first year ever teaching, and she's been there, probably 8+ years now. But Jade really brought together everything that we were learning that was more definitional finance, and made it make sense for everyday learning and understanding what's actually going on in the world. We would bring in the Wall Street Journal, and she would ask us to define what the title of an article actually meant in layman's terms. Just explain to me what this actually means. And in doing so, it really kind of brought what I was learning in class and flipping through flashcards. It really brought it full circle for me to actually start to apply what I am slightly interested in into what I'm definitely interested in. And I think that jump is where a lot of people get lost in terms of pursuing a career in finance or in fintech. So Professor Jade Planchin was huge for me in that front. Also, she just made learning fun. And she's also our coach in our CFA investment team.
Oh, wow.
Did a little bit of travel and some case studies, and she was the one that actually made finance relatable, fun, and gave me that extra boost to pursue it as a career.
I love that. Carol, I imagine just given the sheer number of degrees that you have, this would take some time for you to whittle down.
But I was thinking about it, and what I'm most grateful for, I got my MBA at NYU, and before I started, we met with one of the deans, and this was maybe it was 3 months, before we were going to start classes, and sort of like what we could do over the summer. And right. I was a economics and political science major in undergrad. So, I knew a little bit, but not a lot, right? I didn't really understand finance. And this one dean, his name is Dick Schmidt. He said, you're going to read the Wall Street Journal every day this summer, and you are going to learn so much by just reading the paper every day that you are going to be amazed at how much you're going to know. And then he recommended an accounting book, because of course I didn't really know anything about accounting. And it was like think about it as sort of a kid's workbook.
Okay, I was going to say, being assigned an accounting workbook to read over the summer might have
No,
been a
but it
bit
was
challenging.
fun. Okay. So what I did at the time was I thought of everything in the world as debits and credits. And and
Ah,
it was a great thing for me to have and to use and to get accustomed to thinking in the world of accounting, because I had never thought about anything to do with accounting before.
oh wow,
So
that is amazing.
for me, that getting together and preparing for like what the new world was going to be as an MBA student was really terrific. And I appreciate this dean's taking the time to, okay, today, classes are pretty much 50-50 men and women. But I can tell you at
Right.
my class at NYU, which is a long time ago, maybe there were 5% women.
Wow. Wow.
It's a while ago.
Absolutely.
Things have changed.
Things have changed.
So, I mean, this was, anybody was invited to attend this like pre-summer, kind of event. But I, being more anxious probably than the guys, I definitely wanted to avail myself of any, extra stuff that I could absorb.
Sure.
And I say to people, I've learned more from being a regular reader of financial stuff. And I read the Journal, I read the New York Times Finance. I just read, and now I would say
You devour that stuff.
I read
Absolutely.
Bloomberg probably more than anybody. I would say I'm a Bloomberg devotee, whatever, but I really learned practical stuff from reading articles every single day.
Oh, that's
I
fantastic.
start my day with reading Bloomberg stuff and I end my day with it.
Yeah, that's assuming you end your day. I've definitely gone to bed and seen messages from you online well after that, and woken up what I thought was quite early and missed messages. Have been posted.
But I do feel you got to stay current.
Yeah.
And personally, I think the best financial reporting comes from Bloomberg. I don't work for them.
Yeah, no.
I do think.
Yeah, if I could just jump in one thing additional, one thing that I think is important to say too, just from an educational perspective, is that it's the importance of intellectual curiosity and individual education. What we're going to be able to do with this partnership is to provide that initial boost and baseline understanding of the world of the financial industry and AI. But to then just use that by itself is not going to really bring anyone that participates in this class anywhere. What it will give you is that initial boost to really start to get that confidence that, hey, this world isn't actually as complicated as I once thought. And if I really put my mind to this, I think that there could be a lot of opportunity here. That's with ViableEdu, that's what we really tried to hone in on with our students is we're not going to provide you with everything that you need to know because it's naturally insatiable. There's always something more that you need to know, something that you have to stay current on because this world's changing so much. But to get that initial foot in the door is the biggest step. But from there, it really comes down to that individual push, and hopefully we're equipping our students with that momentum to move forward educationally and professionally.
Absolutely, and igniting that spark within them. So on the spirit of learning, where can folks go to learn more about Viable?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our website, ViableEdu.com, and we're pretty active on LinkedIn. So it's just ViableEdu, the letters, on LinkedIn, and you can reach out to me, Joel Brown-Christenson, and the other co-founder and lead instructor, Chris White, on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we include the links as we drop this podcast, so folks will find it easy enough to find those links and connect with you that way. But I really appreciate both your time. I've taken enough of it for today, but I knew this was going to be a fun one, and it did not disappoint. Thank you both so much, and again, hopefully I imagine as the partnership continues, the three of us will be chatting sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Thanks so much, guys.